to this session. As we said, we need to wake up. Chaitanya, you've woken them up properly? Thank you. You want it closer? Oh, wow, okay. As you can see, we have a great panel. All analysts who have been in this field for more than 20 years. Rahil, of course, longer. Each one has their own opinion. And as I was mentioning earlier in the morning, we were having a discussion that at the beginning of the crop, each analyst will have his own number. But come December, every trade house will narrow down to within a 500,000 ton figure on production. So, but it seems as though we've achieved it closer than that. It's down to 200. Anyway, we've seen Rahil's presentation. He's mentioned ISMA, ISTA, and National Federation all within 31.3, 31.5 million tons. I'm going to take it one by one and ask each one. So Nitin, who's now with Sucden India, has been, let me just get your mic. So first, let's start with the production numbers, where we stand in terms of production. According to you, what is our production number for the 23-24 crop?
First of all, thank you, ChiniMandi, for having me here, and thank you, sir. So my estimate for 23-24 is 31.5 million metric ton. So actually, the market consensus is today everyone is standing at 31.5. It's very scary, actually. I mean.
So you already achieved the consensus. I'm going to ask Prasad. Prasad always is an outlier. Prasad, let's have your view. You've obviously, and talk us through the number from where you started, let's say in June, July last year, to where you have reached, and what is the reason behind it?
I mean, this year, before the ethanol policy, I think we were at around 29.1. Post the ethanol policy changes, we moved back to 30.3, and with all the crushing data available and the discussion with the mills and all, now we think the all India net sugar production could be around 30.8 plus or minus 200. So, I mean, if you really ask me what are the changes, I think what we are seeing from the data before the season began and now is that the ag yields, especially in the north of Pune and parts of Satara, are much better than what initially expected. Last time when we went in October, what we saw. And unlike other trade houses, what we are doing is we are doing something called crop cutting experiments, wherein we did about 179 experiments this year. From that to what mills are reporting this year, those two districts are showing a deviation in the ag yields. The second thing that what we are finding within the data is that the overall area under plant sugarcane is higher than what initially estimated. So this is what is pushing the Maharashtra higher than what initially we thought. And even today, my estimate versus what the market consensus is, the difference is only Maharashtra. I am still at 9.15, whereas most people expect 9.5 million tons in Maharashtra. So that's a major difference.
Okay, great. Sachin, you've seen it from both sides. You've been analyzing, you've been going to the fields, and now on the commercial side. What's your view on the crop number for this year?
See, I mean, initially, when before the ethanol policy, we were always on a campaign that the sugar production is going to be higher than what everybody or estimated. We were in the campaign of higher production. So before the policy came up, we were at about 29.8. Then once the policy on ethanol ban and everything happened, we moved our estimation to 31.5. So from the beginning on only, we were in a higher campaign. There are various reasons for that, especially Maharashtra or Karnataka, you look at it. I mean, as rightly pointed out by the Prasad, the plant portion is higher this year. So that is the reason you are getting better yields. And another added advantage is the prolonged harvesting. Since everybody was expecting the lower crop, the labor didn't turn up. And that is the reason the harvesting is being prolonged. So for example, last year, the average crush was about 930,000 tons a day. Today we are with average capacity of about 780,000 tons a day.
So about a 20% reduction on a daily crush.
Daily crush. That has
So that's pushed the crop 20% longer.
Correct. So that's
and also increased yields according to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's on the production side. The prices and everything we have a separate discussion. So
yeah, but the prices. That's a separate. I mean, that's the ChiniMandi session. Don't worry.
Correct.
There's going to be a lot of fireworks in that.
Yeah.
So you still stick with 31.5 now?
Yes, I still.
You're not seeing it higher than.
See, I mean, okay, it depends on how the crops in UP, recent rains in UP may help the agriculturally. So, and the plant had just started harvesting, so we don't know exact what's the yield is going to be from the plant cane, and if the plant cane gets fetch the good yield, then there is a chances of higher production from UP, which will result into the higher production. Could be 32 million tons.
32. 31.5 to 32.
Correct.
Okay. Karamyog, I'm going to come back to you in a minute, but before that, I'm going to ask Rahil. Now that you are on the milling side in UP, what's your view on the UP numbers, the impact? What sort of numbers are you expecting in UP? Any disease, cane disease? What's your view on the number in UP?
As regard the mill is concerned, I think I'm looking for the cane for myself now. So every truck is worth for me. I think I was speaking with Sanjay Tapriya yesterday. He mentioned to me that he has some concerns about the plant yield. He's been on the ground and he feels that he has a slight concerns about the plant yield. Also, the weather has been bad as far as UP, the day temperature, as an agronomist, they will be better to say about it. But there is some concern which Sanjay was telling me about the cane. And honestly speaking, I think because we are looking for cane, maybe that could be the reason on his mind that there is a lower cane. Okay. But I think...
overall UP, 11.5?
I would say that. I mean, that's the safe number to bet on. And as Sachin mentioned, if the plant yields are better, then we would see another 200,000-300,000 tons excess production there. But I think 11.5 is a very safe number for you.
Okay. Now I'll come back to Karamyog. You've worked with a few mills, as you put in your presentation. Do you have any ongoing data, as in how the crop has progressed for these? I mean, I don't need you to specify a particular mill or look at data from a mill, but any idea on data on what's happened over the last six months to 8 months on yields, on cane fields?
Yes, so it's difficult for us to comment on, the yield numbers as everyone has done, but I think specifically, I mean, our focus last year was predominantly in Maharashtra, and what we've seen is that I think the estimates initially were quite inaccurate, and yields have turned out to be much higher than what was initially anticipated. And as I think Nitin pointed out, other members pointed out, crushing has been extremely slow this year. I think capacities are underutilized, and therefore the season is being prolonged. I think overall, in terms of the expectations from sugar mill side, what we've seen is that the initial estimates have been beaten by, I would say, at least 30 to 40% in terms of yield. And for the next year, what we are seeing is that plantation is roughly, I think in Maharashtra, roughly about 20 to 30% lower. Ratoon is being carried forward. There's been a decent Arsali plantation, but I think in terms of the overall figures, I think we would expect a 20%, 25% drop in plantation in Maharashtra specifically.
In total area?
In total area.
cane area.
Total area,
Okay,
yeah.
so that sort of nicely brings us back. Let's start with Sachin this time. What's your number for the 24-25 crop, all India, and then maybe break it down and reasons for that number?
See, I mean, it's totally depends. I mean, initially we were, I'm still at 29 million tons of sugar production, net sugar production. It depends on the ethanol policy. Maybe if the opening stock is good, then government may allow another 1 million, 1.5 million for
Additional
ethanol diversion. And if the crop is a bit higher this year, it will totally reflect into the next year's crop because it really depends on how the health of the crop this year, how the plant cane has given the yield. So that will reflect again in next year.
Okay, so basically you're at about 29.5 net sugar production for next year.
Yeah, with the, if the ethanol, so I don't have ethanol into my balance sheet right now. So I mean, obviously, if you're looking at the very tight stock, then the government may say, okay, we need to control the price. We don't have to go for ethanol, so let's cut down the ethanol, which nobody's like to hear about anyway. But if the crop is good, they can allow. So then my crop number will drop down to, let's say, 28, maybe 27.
Okay, so on the low side of 28 with additional ethanol?
Correct.
Otherwise, current policy basis 29.5. Prasad, what about you? What's your view? How are you seeing the planting and longer term for the next crop?
I think the initial trends in planting in Maharashtra is indicating plant cane, that is Adsali and pre-seasonal, down by anywhere between 12 to 18% between different districts. Now the key question is how much of the current year plant harvest will be retained as Ratoon. So I think moving forward from here till August, I think May, the temperatures in May and how the distribution of rainfall in June, that will determine the overall area. And then looking at the weather patterns, which is that we are moving from an El Nino to La Nina transition period, and then how the IOD plays, MJO plays between May and June, that will determine the onset and distribution of rainfall in June. So looking into all this, we think that area under sugarcane cultivation in Maharashtra could drop between 21 to 23%. Karnataka may be about 20% as on date. So once again, we'll have to review at the end of June. So with that, the net sugar production, we are looking at 27.8 for 24-25. And we think this restrictive ethanol policy will continue. Maybe about 1 million ton could be diverted to ethanol even into the next year. So which means that the total sucrose availability will be around 28.8, 29 million tons.
Okay, that's very aggressive numbers there. Nitin, what's your view? What are you looking at? What is the information you're getting from the ground in terms of planting? Is there still planting to happen in Maharashtra, like in UP? I mean, they plant after wheat harvest. What's the planting pattern been like so far, and will there be more planting?
For Maharashtra, Adsali and pre-seasonal planting window is already over. Seasonal planting window is open, but water level is too low. So farmers are worried to plant the new cane for next season. So I can see a significant drop for the upcoming season actually. And you know that 2023 monsoon was very bad. So it will getting impacted to the 24-25 crops. And if upcoming monsoon is good, that will help for 25-26 season. So I can see all India sucrose production could be around 28 million. Unless any surplus carry forward from 23-24, I don't see any ethanol, sugar diversion for ethanol will be getting permitted. So that's what for 24-25 from my side. But I can see Uttar Pradesh will be continuing with the same as usual. I don't see significant drop in Uttar Pradesh, but I can see significant drop in Maharashtra and Karnataka, along with smaller states like Madhya Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana. These states will be getting hit due to the bad weather recorded in 2023.
So basically, according to you, the northern states are looking better, whereas the western and the southern states,
Exactly.
well, excluding Tamil Nadu, because they've had decent rain. So the central part of the country is looking a bit lower than this year, say about 15-20% for next
Exactly.
year. What's your overall number for 24-25? Any idea?
For 25-26,
No, 24-25.
24-25, my number is 28 million. It's,
28 million.
Yeah, net sucrose. Okay. I don't see any ethanol diversion actually for next year.
And Rahil, you stick to the...
As I said, very difficult for the current year. There is just no anomaly between anybody. So I mean, it's just a repetitive one. Good. But I think it's all depend on, as they rightly said. I mean, the ground reality on Maharashtra and Karnataka is bad for 24-25. If it's good rain, then we have a good 25-26. Otherwise we have a cause for concern there as well. But I think I completely agree with Nitin that Maharashtra is looking a bit poor for 24-25. And I think, as I mentioned, the net number could be whatever is this year production. I'm putting 2 million tons down straight.
Okay.
So if we are right, say 31.5, then 29.5, taking 1.7 of diversion. And that is the diversion which will be in the hands of government for the next year, whether what they want to. They want to have a tight opening balance or a tight closing balance.
While we are on the word diversion, are you seeing additional diversion to Gur Khansari? I mean, diversion to ethanol is a relatively new phenomenon. Diversion to Gur and Khansari has been a historic one. This year, are you seeing more cane shifting towards Gur and Khansari, or is it the same?
I think Maharashtra is seeing a bit of heavy diversion on Gur and Khansari. Sorry, not Khansari, but Gur definitely. Maharashtra only has 3 Khansari plants, so leave them aside. They are 1,500 tons, 200 tons. But Gur, we are seeing it probably.
Many more crushers?
But yeah. So I went to, for the first time I went to a region called Daund, and there was a small village called Yavat near there. And while walking down the stream, you could see every household behind was making 1 ton of Gur and jaggery. And I was surprised to see at least about 150 houses doing that.
Wow.
So walking down that small lane, and I never saw that happening earlier. So I think I would say that Maharashtra is seeing a bit of diversion on jaggery, good for sure, and maybe probably storing it for 24 election, where you may need it for the movement into Gujarat.
I didn't want to bring that up, but since you have let the cat out of the bag, yeah, I mean that's always been a case. Every election year, you do see a larger proportion being diverted, especially into jaggery. Good. I think we've fairly covered the 23, 24, 24, 25 production numbers. As you can see, we're pretty close to consensus. Let's move to consumption. And I've always found this very difficult to nail down because different people have different ways of looking at it. There is obviously sugar that's being consumed not only within the country, sugar that's leaking into our neighboring countries. And then, of course, we have the famous pipeline, which we say is anywhere between 500,000 tons to 1.5, 2 million tons. What is your view on consumption? I mean, I've seen your numbers, 28.7, increasing next year. Do you think that the increase next year will be to the extent that we have seen this year? As in, year on year, if you're saying from 27.5 or 27.7, so a 1 million ton increase, do you see another 1 million increase next year, or will that increase be a bit subdued? Is the pipeline now getting full? Is the pipeline empty? What is your view on the consumption side?
I've been bullish consumption for forever. I mean, as the year
That we
passes
know.
by. So I mean, in my house, everyone is contributing 20 kilos a year. So I don't see consumption coming down at all. You look at the government numbers for this year. The October release was 2.9 million tons. The November release were around 2.9, 2.83 million tons. Then you had December at around 2.5 or 2.4. Jan and Feb around 2.4, 2.5. If you multiply that by 12, it's 320.
Yeah.
I mean, let's forget that for a moment. I have not seen any one association writing a letter to the government seeking an extension to those quotas, despite government asking them to give all the declarations, government asking them to do every detailing of it, mapping of your contracts and sales. And not one association have written for the month of Jan, where we had a day closure to Ram Mandir. We had 3-day strike on trucks. We had bad weather in the north, and not one letter for seeking an extension, which tends to show that whatever is being given is being dispatched. So now, whether there's been dispatched to neighboring countries, whether there has been dispatched to the kitchens, it's very tough. But I think I am seeing that pilferage into the neighboring state around 40 to 45,000 tons a month, and that's our consumption. So I mean, that is adding 500,000 ton, and the new generation which is coming in will add up another 500,000 ton. So I think a growth of 1,000,000 ton is safe enough for the next year as well.
Nitin, what's your consumption number both for this year going forward? How do you look at consumption?
Post-COVID, I can see the growth year on year actually. So for current season, I'm looking at 28.5 million consumption for 23-24, and next year 500,000 growth, so around 29 would be there. So I can see the growth actually. If we look the consumption pattern actually, if we split the rural and urban areas, so nowadays rural areas getting, wider spread sweet shops are coming in the place, and that in the rural areas consumption growing very fastly. And we can see the trend, if there is marriage ceremony, a wedding ceremony, engagement ceremony or any function we are organizing. So a few years back, there was one sweet offered, but nowadays there are competition between families to families, and two to three sweet dishes are there. So I can see the simply consumption is growing, and don't think it will pull back very soon.
Okay, thanks. Prasad, any view on consumption from you?
Yeah, taking cues from what Nitin said, I think what we are clearly seeing in sugar consumption is a clear distinction, rural and urban, direct and indirect. What I see is that indirect consumption is definitely improving a lot in India because, as Nitin said, there are so many new product lines that are coming which are using sugar, branded and local brands. It could be either sweets or it could be drinks. So there is growth definitely in the urban indirect sugar consumption, rural indirect sugar consumption. However, I think there is a moderation in the direct sugar consumption at the household level. So taking all this into the consideration, I think the population growth around 1.1%, we are slightly putting the growth slightly below the population growth. So this year we are looking at 28.3 and next year at around 28.7. That's the consumption we are looking at.
But you're only looking at Indian domestic consumption. You're not seeing leakage. You're not adding leakage into that.
Yeah, the leakage is the biggest.
We already have a figure of 500,000 here.
Yeah. But at the same time, there is always this concept of unrecorded production in India. So we think that the both will set off. So
they knock off each other. Okay, great. Sachin, views.
Mostly the consumption is 28, 28.5, call it 29. It's all the debatable question. Nobody has a very scientific approach to it, rather than Rahil by considering, okay, whatever the dispatch is the consumption. My counter argument, it's not a counter argument anyway, but it's like have we looked at it, the data of the diabetic patient in India that we need to really monitor, which I think a threat to the consumption. About 80 million people is a diabetic diabetic patient in India, and about 50% are not even reporting that they are diabetic or they're not getting health checkup. The CAGR of diabetic patients is 2.5%. So these diabetic patients is growing at a 2.5% every year. So that is also we need to consider. And after, try to come up with some kind of model, which is still not a scientific way to look, but I think we need to really take the consumption with a pinch of salt.
Okay, that's interesting. Karamyog, maybe we can get some views on your own household. Let's not forget the country. Have you seen an increase or a decrease in consumption of sugar in your own household?
I mean, I think I can speak on, it's a very wild guess, of course, right? So our background is not to look at consumption of sugar, and we have no AI models to predict whether Indians are going to eat less sugar or not. But I think in the urban households, I think there's of course more conscious effort on decreased consumption. But I think in general, my personal gut feel would say that in general, the overall consumption trends in India are not going to get hampered, at least in the near future, is what I feel.
Well, I mean, we are consuming more processed foods, which necessarily contain sugar. So that's why, overall. Thank you. Basically, thanks, Sachin, for stirring the pot, because I think that's the consumption, and it can be a contentious issue. Thank you for stirring the pot, and it makes sense to have a little bit of a discussion across. That's what a panel is meant for. If we agreed on everything, we could be sitting outside having our coffee, right? Right. I think I'm done with my questions. Do we have any questions from the audience? Mr. Naikna Breha.
No question really, just one clarification. Rahil bhai, you said no association has approached for extension of quota. That's not entirely correct. We have been writing to them, approaching them, and more than writing, meeting them. Officially, but unofficially, they have indicated Government of India has taken a policy decision per se not to give extension for their own thinking. Except one month, I think July or August, they gave extension in a particular circumstances of excess rain, traffic jam and all that. But otherwise, Government of India is not in favor of giving extension, and they have clearly told us don't write any letters to us. Therefore, we stopped writing letters. Just a clarification.
No, thanks for that clarity. I think I spoke with Ajit Bhai and requested him that, this, irrespective of whether the government have decided or not, but we should be writing. The reason is, you see, any smaller, like a dispatch from a factory which is happening on the 2nd of Feb because of non-availability of railway rakes, because of non-availability of truck at that moment, that couple of days are today taking you off to a wrong side of the quota, especially to a trader, because we are reporting every Tuesday our stocks now. So if mill don't help us, we get onto the wrong side, and which is technically not the right thing.
Great. Thank you. We have a couple of questions here.
It's not a question. I must congratulate Mahindra Smart Harvesting Solutions. I think we are all speaking about numbers, what are going to be the production numbers, what are going to be the consumption numbers. I think the sugar industry per se is besieged with this problem of getting its numbers in the right place. And if that is to happen, I think it would be an appeal to the entire industry to really get into something like smart harvesting solutions, where we are really able to try and estimate what is going to be the exact planting of sugarcane. If not exact, at least to the fairly accurate side of it. Because we have a lot of mills, who have overlapping areas, and the cane reports tend to get expanded. And therefore, we, many a times get wrong on the figures. But I think this is one area where most of the sugar mills should be ready to work on. That's an appeal from my side.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, great. I think that's what Mr. Kattal was saying made a lot of sense because, I mean, I've been in this industry now for more than 35 years. Never have I ever seen anybody get the crop number correct. Never. I mean, it's a plus or minus 10% every time. And it's not consistent plus, it's not a consistent minus. So, you know, the technology that you're bringing to the table, I think, is a great technology. Any more questions? We had one at the back there.
On the weather side for next year, global weather forecasting agencies are estimating the peak out of El Nino around March something. Would the agronomists be having their own internal assessment for weather conditions next year, or rather next season?
Weather pattern for next season. As agronomists, and I think we have at least 3 agronomists here.
I think to really have a view on weather so early into the season is very difficult because for the last 7-8 years I'm following the NOVA on a daily basis and trying to gauge how the forecast is actually materializing into the actual event. I see that if at all you want to really understand what's going to be the June rainfall, I think starting April 2nd week or so, what is the forecast that is available for June in the 2nd week of April? Maybe that may be the close reality. But having said that, I think as you mentioned, I mentioned earlier also, as we are transitioning from, one of the third strongest El Nino to La Nina, I think there will be a lot of weather disturbances between March and April. How it would further impact May, June, the IOD and MJO is, I think it is very tough to really have a view, but it's just a factor to continuously watch.
Prasad, just one follow-up on that. You say we are transitioning from an El Nino to a La Nina, and that we will see weather disruptions March onwards. So basically Q2 of 24. Does that mean more rains? Does it mean more storms?
I think what I see a parallels is 2017. I mean, 15, 16 were the drought years. Same in 2017, we were transitioning from the second strongest El Nino to La Nina. And we have seen a very strong unseasonal rains in March and April with thunderstorms, hailstorms threatening or impacting our wheat and mustard crops. Then we had a very good May and early June rainfall. Will that event happen? I'm not sure, but I'm just watching.
Okay, so from historical perspective, technically, and I mean, you looked at it from the point of view of mustard and wheat, but for sugarcane, water is good.
Sugarcane, if the same pattern, then it is good. That's why I said May, June will be very crucial.
Okay, we're stirring up the pot a bit more. Stirring it up. Production might go up next year. You never know. There you go. Okay, any more questions?
We have time for one last question. Yeah.
So production estimates, if panelists can give broad their assumption for what is the cane diversion they have assumed for good and Kansari on seed, broad number will be helpful.
Broad numbers on, for this year or for next year?
Any number, this year would be better.
What's your estimate of diversion to good and Kansari for this year? Have you done an estimate on that or? Yeah, so 72% drawl towards cane, 28% diversion to seed, go to Kansari, whatever.
Got it.
I think we've got a consensus on that number. I think that brings the session to an end. Thank you very much. Thank you to all the panelists. They've been great. Thank you for our participation. And I hand the mic back.
Yes, thank you so much. May I request Mr. Kiran Wadhwana of Comtex to please come up and present a token of our appreciation to our entire panel and to our moderator. Our panel of Mr. Karamyog Singh, Mr. MSR Prasad, Mr. Nitin Tarate, Mr. Sachin Lakade, and Mr. Rahil Shaikh. Let's have a group picture of the entire panel here. Let's have a round of applause, everybody, for this panel.